One, two, one, two, one, two. Hello. Okay, we're going to kick off in about 30 seconds. So you have 30 seconds. 29, 28, 27. So, Radu, there's 4 mics. So we don't have to share? Oh, nice. Okay, so we're good to go. And we're live, we're streaming as well. How cool is that? Hi, folks. Hello. So nice to see you. Thank you for coming. It's been a year. Can you believe it? It's been 12 months since the last event we had here. And I think the subject back then was AI. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling we discussed and touched on AI. So we're going to keep the same team, discuss a bit more about AI, see what has changed. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. So I'm going to keep it super brief. I really want to have the participants, the panelists, and our keynote just to really take the time. So I'm not going to take too long. But welcome to another Dublin UX, or not Dublin UX, UXDX. And you know, I'm your friendly ambassador. So if you're not connected, connect with me. I always love to have a chat and a conversation. You know me. If you know me well, you probably know I can talk for hours and hours. So don't hold back. I also want to thank our kind of a main event venue, Workday, right? They're always very good and they're always hosting some really, really nice events. So I want to thank Workday and, you know, the team and everybody kind of staying back. A big round of applause. Thank you so much. And, you know, it doesn't happen very often that a company comes in and always embraces discussions and open conversations. So this is a really big thing as well. And also, just on the subject of AI, I know I've seen an article today in the newspaper that Workday is actually opening an AI Center for Excellence. And that means about 200 jobs from what I've seen. That's amazing, right? It kind of shows you how valuable the market is. And if you're looking that way, definitely look and have a conversation with the guys when the positions become available. We do have an agenda, right? So at the beginning, we will have Pooja just walking us through a very interesting topic. And I'm really excited to hear what she has to say because she doesn't sit in a traditional UX position. She's more of a marketing. And I'm always happy when I hear marketing in the conversation because think about it. We have UXDX, MX, maybe? I don't know. Rory's here. He can probably just tell us if that's going to happen. So we were just saying that we have UXDX, MX for marketing, you know, MX. And I'm not going to delay it any longer. So I'll just invite you, Pooja, so a really quick round of applause. I'll hand you the mic.
Hey guys, Pooja, nice to meet you all. I'm going to talk about a topic that in reflection makes a lot of sense, right? I was thinking about how do we want to spend the next 20, 25 minutes. I spent a lot of time about product roadmaps, positioning, messaging, pricing, packaging, and often the bridge between the product business unit and our commercial business units. I sit in the product function and own the product marketing function within that business unit, right? So I want to talk about power of constraints. Just think about whether it's your product roadmap or any other discussion or project that you run. How do you drive those dialogues? How do you drive those negotiations and influence cross-functional colleagues, which is probably the hardest part and often comes in the way of speed to market, right? So that's what I want to talk about, turning the limits, the information and the resources you have and turning it into a leverage for both profitability of the business and even professionally, right? Well, there, I've given you lots of details. I'll move on to the next slide. So first, we'll try to focus a little bit on what I really mean by constraints and the methodology I apply. And then I'm also going to focus on 2 case studies or 2 projects over the last couple of years that I've worked on, and I think they are ideal for today's session. We're going to look at how we applied constraints in those projects and the outcomes. A big area is the commercial lens, right? How do we understand the activities or the inputs we have? How does that influence the overall project? Or how does that show up in the annual reports? Joining those dots is super critical, right? And then finally, obviously, I'm a product marketer, so this is from my lens. I'd love to hear your views on how do you see it from a UX or a design or product perspective as well. So power of constraints, right? So constraints create focus, focus drives momentum, momentum delivers impact. That's the sequence, right? So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, we're talking about divergent thinking, which is freedom to explore. You've got a challenge or a hypothesis. You got to go figure out a solution, right? You've got these couple of different craft owners sitting together and figuring out, okay, how do we solve for this? How do we get more revenue? Or how do we address user experience or drive more adoption of this feature, et cetera? And then there's the convergence. So as you start scoping out the details and understand, okay, what are the limitations with all these ideas we've got, you're really going into the convergent or the constraints area that forces you to prioritize, that forces you to find the optimized way of going to a valuable solution. And that, I think, is really powerful. Right? So let's look at one such situation, right? So the task we got was improve future win rates. Win rate is a lot of things, right? So let me just narrow that down for you. So it could be, how do we win more versus our competition? How do we win more as a account exec or a seller? Or what's my performance versus my peer? It could be win rate in a sales journey or a marketing funnel. The specific case that I've brought to you today is we were looking at prospects coming in, but they had this fear. We were talking earlier, which was in the enterprise space, which is the space I focus on a lot. Customers or prospects are worried that migrating their data from a simpler product to our product is hard. There's a lot of investment they have to do. They're going to end up subscribing to 2 different portfolios, and it might take 6 months before they're using our software. So how do we help them, give them the confidence to take away any fear, uncertainty, or doubt about this experience that they have, right? So changing that perceived value or even improving the experience, that is the specific part of the journey that I'm going to talk about that will help improve our win rate and take away that FUD. That fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I'm full of acronyms, guys, so just stop me. So that was a part of the win-loss analysis. We were looking at an area that we want to solve for and improve our win rate versus that fear that comes in the way or creates frictions in our sales cycle. The market trend, right? The sentiment in the market is exactly the same as well. We know customers got a pain point, but in the last year or so, we've seen a lot of AI incumbent players come in, and they're new, so they can claim, we'll onboard you, we'll implement you faster, right? And that is an interesting space because it just taps into the fear of these prospects. And they're like, okay, I'm willing to try this because it doesn't need as much commitment as it would for any other software to migrate my data. So we wanted to tap into this problem statement and solve for the business, improve the win rate, right? But we are the same people who also have to solve for 20 other problems, right? What needs to change in the product? There are product roadmap commitments. We still need to hit our monthly and quarterly numbers. So how do we support all of this and also introduce this new project? That is some of the trade-offs that we were thinking of positioning this hypothesis and bringing it to our leadership. It was led by a group of different functions. Professional services is one of the teams that was leading it, who usually owns the implementation. They're really solid tech guys, very prescriptive. And once we sign a deal with a customer, they would migrate the data and onboard them. So they are the execution experts. We've got product manager, who I would work with very closely to identify what is the package we want to offer to this customer. Product marketing, we wanted to understand this customer pain point and see how we can, what's the right positioning even for this space, and is there a willingness to pay actually for something like this if we do develop it, right? And then finally, user experience, who would actually design this journey for us. So there was a bunch of us got together and we were all so excited. We had a simple thing. Wow, this is interesting. This is going to be a game changer. We got to test this. It's not your typical roadmap, launch a new exciting feature. It's completely out of that bucket, right? So these were the two constraints we started to apply. And the reason is we knew what we had to solve for. We just didn't know how. So we had to work with the information we have got. And the information we had was customer segment. We obsessed with customer segmentation. We started to break down who has the willingness to pay for a simple onboarding, right? How big is that pipeline or that addressable market? How big is that within our existing customer base today? Can we turn that into high referenceability, right? So we wanted to understand our readiness. And the second is return on investment for our customers across each of those segments. How quickly would they see time to value? If we onboarded them in a simple, straightforward way, would they actually see the benefits in the product? Because it means we're stripping out some of the things like extreme customization or complex integrations. So where is the value across each of those segments? And profitability for us. Are we actually going to make money if we follow this path, right? Would we really get that win rate we're talking about? So this is the process, right? I was talking about those divergent, convergent thinking. It's a human-centered design thinking methodology, quite popular. We've tried to adopt it when we're stuck, right? When we have different ideas bouncing, and how do we streamline some of the thinking? So on the left-hand side, the core team got together. I led the market research, the customer segmentation strategy, voice of customer, et cetera. And we had this customer experience framework being developed by the PM and the UX team, just to see how would that implementation and onboarding journey really look against each of those segments, right? How can we make it attractive and deliver the value? And then we went and took it to the commercial team, right? Like, hey guys, we've got this great idea and we see a huge opportunity. Can you do some commercial modeling for us so we can start taking this to market? And that's where I have my sad face, because we weren't really sure. The feedback we got was like, okay, we don't really tap into that kind of customer segment, right? Or our win rate will only go up X%. But as we started joining the dots across each of those segments, we could see an improved, impactful win rate. So we positioned the story around the end. Implementation or improved onboarding was the means to the end of that win rate. And we were going to start with a customer segment instead of stretching it ourselves across all, right? So we picked our battles, went to our GTM team, where now sort of the UX or the PM team is gotten busy. And now I'm driving those discussions with our project manager and the go-to-market team, which is the sales and the marketing folks on, okay, what do we need to do together to bring this to market? You can see my really upset face there. And they basically said, this is going to disrupt the way we sell. This is going to make my team, that's what they said, make my team fatigued. I want them to hit their monthly, weekly targets. I don't want any distraction. And that tells us something, new information. Got to refine this, right? We have a skill set gap here, or like a lack of understanding of what we're trying to do. So if we were a startup, it would be so simple. Just hire the right people, get the job done, and bring it to market. And that's the exact logic we applied. It's like we need to have a focused squad to support us to deliver this. With the right skill set of understanding the needs of this specific segment as a starting point, get some proof and evidence that this has traction, and then we can see how we want to stretch this. At the end of that test, we had, I don't know if you have heard of disqualified leads, right? So this is part of the marketing funnel. We were able to improve an uptick in our disqualified leads and take away that fear, uncertainty, and doubt around, oh, this implementation is going to be so complicated. We could see an improvement in our sales cycle. We were able to shorten our sales cycle because we were addressing this concern straight away, right? And then I mentioned the squad, right? We looked internally around how many teams, how many people who have familiarity with this segment and could believe in this idea and could get this stood up for us. So 20 people from customer services, from implementation team, from other segments in sales and other products of sales within Sage moved to this role. And I think it was just a phenomenal way of delivering something out of the box. So that's one of the cases I wanted to share, and share the constraints that we applied. The second one is two-factor authentication rollout. Okay, so very exciting topic, right? I had returned from a maternity leave. I was finding my feet back in the business, finding projects, and this was given to me, right? And I was like, there's nothing about product marketing here. Where is the sexy numbers? And, is this going to be in the annual report? I'm not talking to my usual stakeholders. This is not right, So I went in really, really sad. But basically, it was a board mandate. We had 40 different products. Each of them had a different way of sign-on and two-factor authentication. We wanted to standardize it. That was the ask. Sounds quite simple, right? There were no metrics attached to it apart from every user must have 2FA. It did feel disruptive, both for our customers. They had to change the way they were accessing our products. It was disruptive for us because we didn't understand what we were doing, but we were just put together in the same room. So CISO, which is the Information and Security Office team, led it. They would sit in our corporate affairs org. Customer success was in the room. I was wondering what's going on. They were looking at me, wondering what I'm doing here. And we had the user experience team. And there we applied the brilliant idea of, let's do some divergent convergent thinking and just figure out a way of plowing this through, right? We were all thinking, what are we doing here? So the two different constraints we applied. First was understanding. Who are my stakeholders? What are they doing here, right? So customer services is where I wanted to start. We had our EVP of customer success. She's really amazing. And basically, the download I got from her is, if someone can't log in, they're going to call us, right? And my team isn't set up to talk about two-factor authentication. They are technical teams. They're product experts. And we have thresholds. I mean, there was a business angle to it. We're all getting our bonuses on the basis of our net promoter score, right? If the transactional experience is going to be about, I can't log into my product, I want to churn, we've got a big issue here. So we wanted to address some of that, understand go deeper in that space. And the second one was, well, who is going to not understand what two-factor authentication is? It's quite a common topic. And most of our users are also using other softwares. They probably have the same processes. So who's going to call, right? So we wanted to understand the use case. And those were the two different buckets of constraints we wanted to focus on and create a structure from there. And you can see here, we're really displaying to all the stakeholders, we're all on the same team. It wasn't me versus you. So again, the first bucket, which is on the left-hand side, we looked at we were all quite upset. We were trying to figure things out, right? I learned so much about customer services, right? What are their thresholds? How are they rewarded? What are their incentives? How many customers call for what reasons across which product line? Across which geo? What are the tax accounting seasons that could come in the way of volumes of calls? So a variety of things were put together, and we refined that information to filter out a forecast and give that satisfaction to our EVP of customer services. This is the forecast if we do a match of multiple different products at a time to get to that, to start kicking off the 2FA rollout. It does not affect your thresholds. It does not affect your NPS, right? So that was the first take that we did. We got a stakeholder happy, and we were able to get them on board because they were going to have the hardest job when we were going to roll this out. The second was sitting with user experience, which I thought was also quite interesting because I learned about how the journey is going to be. It was going to be great for some because we were not changing their journey at all. And we were just taking the exact same journey and plugging it into other products. For some, it would be slightly disruptive. For some others, it's going to be a significant change. So we started to size that up. So a bit like opportunity sizing, right? So we started to size up, okay, how many customers are likely to call us from this product line because they have integrations with some other product like Salesforce. So they've just rolled out their two-factor authentication 2 years back. And if they're integrated with us, that means they already know the process. They'll figure it out if they're stuck, right? So they wouldn't call us. So we tried to do some of these guesstimates. And finally, we had a prioritized 5 use cases, and we sized up and took that recommendation of how we're going to roll out to the board, right? And yeah, basically the ask was do it in 3 months. We said we'll do it in 6. But because we had a broken down methodology and we really unpacked that problem statement, I think there was more context for everyone to get their buy-in. So at the end of those 6 months, we had 40 plus products that were on 2FA standardized. We had millions of users who were logging into the product with that standard process. We had 28 different locations, 6 months to deliver, and then 3 of our core crew members, including the UX team, got promotion out of it, which I never thought would happen. Because remember, I came from my maternity break thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And I bet all the others were thinking the same way. So it was quite powerful. And on reflection, I'm still talking about it. So I'm really happy that that happened. So some key takeaways would be, you got to lean in, right? It's quite a classic standard one. And you have to get out of your comfort zone. If you keep doing the same thing, you're not flexing your muscle. You're not learning something new. So next time I'm on a call, I can talk about more than just my standard proposition, positioning, context. Understand the impact you make. I can't emphasize the importance of understanding the commercial impact or the business impact of your input. It's so important to join the dots. So ask the question, how does the effort that I'm putting in show up in our annual reports, in the town hall discussions, right? You can even chat with your manager about how does it show up. So you know the impact you're making and how that should reflect in your career progression or the dialogues you have. And opportunities can come from anywhere. Both of them were not a part of my KPIs. I wasn't planning on saying, oh, I'm going to do 2FA, I'm going to that's my job for the year, because my understanding was totally different. So you got to be okay with taking on opportunities that are not necessarily in the linear way in your path, right? And finally, have conviction in your craft. There's a reason why you're brought into these projects, right? I was wondering, why am I in this project or that project? And obviously, there's a strength that I'm delivering, and I'm the only one in that session giving that expertise, and people want to listen to what I have to say. But at the same time, the others are on that call also because they are bringing their unique strengths. So it's really important to appreciate each other's challenges, and together, when you understand those constraints, you are able to stay focused on the actual problem and solve it together instead of drifting into assumptions. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and happy to take questions.
Awesome. Let's see, any questions?
Sorry, thank you for the talk. So my only question, I think maybe missed out, or I was just wondering how difficult was user research or consumer research in this process? Like, where did you find out like this can't be done by your usual process of design or just customer research?
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of my UX experts, right? But I can tell you, for example, in the first case that I talked about, the win rate, a lot of that insight came from market research. So we had a third party, but we also had our UX research team deployed to go and grab some insights. You know, some of them was desktop, a lot of that was field. We interviewed our customers. So again, I engaged with our UX team, the research team, to bring some of those insights. We agreed on what are the key things we want to understand by talking to the specific segments, right? So that was one area. Our UX team is large. They're all coming with different strengths. So that was the research area. And then the designs, I think they proposed a design. That was the power of the speed with which we were going. Like, this is our recommended path. And I had a really interesting yin-yang tension with them. I was like, your path doesn't talk about the value of 2FA. You know, our customers who don't do 2FA today won't understand by 3 lines, we're doing this, click here, sign up. So we need to do something else. And I never understood, like, there's a reason why it's designed in a certain way. There are like guardrails. So we had to find a different path, which was a compromise. So there was additional information, additional links put in the setup journey, which was an exception. But I think it came because of the understanding each other's constraints. Like, look, I have a message I want to convey to our customers. And they said, all I care about is people signing up. So we want to join the dots.
Thanks.
Nice. See another question?
Sorry, just in your first example, you were talking about the idea that you were speaking to a manager of the sales team who was saying that they want their team to execute on the existing kind of process rather than spending more time on the improved future win rate. How do you go into a conversation like that when it's between, say, a quarterly target and a longer term kind of conversation about growth, essentially?
Yeah, I think we've leveraged a lot of, again, I don't know if this is a thing. If we do a monthly business review, which is usually run by our revenue operations org. They come in with the performance of the month, right? And the kind of metrics they talk about are win rate, right? Or this queue went up and this area of the app went down, and all of that, great insights from the data of, let's say, revenue. So from our billing data or from our product usage data. So we try to combine the two. And I just try to use the same language when I'm talking to the leaders. So I wasn't surprised by the pushback that came from the sales VP, but I knew he was talking about an existing problem he has, and he didn't want to increase that same problem by launching a new proposition, right? So instead of telling him, this is how you can solve the problem, because it wasn't for us to solve, we wanted to just stay focused on the implementation onboarding journey. And we picked a different route. And we want to get some evidence and traction before we opened it to the larger discussion.
Yeah, so basically just speaking somebody's language, using the things they care about. That's very important. And that's why this is the biggest reason why I enjoy talking with other teams immediately outside or maybe just adjacent to UX or development, is because I find other teams focus a bit more on the business side and therefore can relate to the annual report. So I found very interesting the fact that you said, look at the annual reports and work backwards. I think that's very interesting. I bet you most of the UX teams probably don't do that, and they probably never read an annual report, which is, kind of a miss if you think about it. Also, the other thing that really strikes me is the similarities between the market side and the UX. So for example, you mentioned customer segmentation. That's what UXers call personas. And sometimes you have to assume some personas because you don't have the data. So you just come up with maybe a more generic placeholder until you can get the data. But the other thing you mentioned that was very interesting was just time to value, which I think some UX teams and some product teams use time to value or success rate. And I'm actually curious, how do you go about measuring that? What was your main point, and how do you get the data and benchmarking against something, right? I'm really curious to see how you've done it.
A great example is I literally finished interviewing a customer who fit that segment. And I asked her, okay, you implemented the product 6 months back. Walk me through what the last 6 months have looked. What are you doing in the product? And I know I can see the usage data, right? Like I can see how many reports they're pulling, how much transactions they're doing. So I asked the same questions to validate. And she said things like, in 2 months, we could see reports to show where the revenue leakage is using your software. And I was like, is that time to value for you? She's like, absolutely, because now I know where to, address those leakages and bring that cash flow back. That is an ROI. So she's already met the expenses of the subscription by absorbing those leakages in product lines that they've got, or the business model that they've got. That's one such example, and that's time to value, right? The sooner you can understand, let's say, where your revenue leakage is, the more successful you will be in the business. That was the point of subscribing to a more complex software. So I think customer interviews, I love talking to customers and finding more insights from them. And they're just so passionate about sharing both their challenges. I don't like this and that's great feedback. And then somewhere in the middle, there are the aha moments that you want to extract.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very interesting. Let's see, do we have any more questions? Anybody else wants to ask anything? If nobody else has, maybe I have a quick one. You mentioned disqualify leads. What can you tell us more about that? And how did you use that? How did you put that into, a flow, or maybe extract some value?
There's just all these fancy stuff coming out thanks to all the technology, right? So 10 years back, I had no idea what DQ is, and now it's a part of our lingo, right? So disqualified leads, I think anyone who has been in sales, right, would know that. So it's just marketing has said, oh, someone downloaded a white paper. They're interested in our product. Let's put them in front of our SDR. So who can go and qualify this more. The SDR says, I asked them, how quickly do they want this implemented, right? What pain point they have, or, do they have the budgets? How much are they willing to spend? And if they don't match any of those, they're disqualified, right? So we picked one strand of that. How many said this was the timeline? Like we wanted something in 3 months, right? So how do we improve our win rate in that space? So that is one of the many metrics within a funnel, sales and marketing funnel. That's the first stage. And then if they're qualified, they meet all the criteria, they move on to an active sales cycle with an account exec who's paid a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I really like the concept. I actually didn't realize that sales is so wasteful from that perspective. Because even though they're called disqualified leads, I think they're a great source of maybe testing or knowledge or things you might have missed, or maybe features that you don't currently have that maybe sales doesn't have time to qualify.
Exactly.
So I think that's very interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely walk away with that.
Yeah, they're tested on how quickly and how many deals can you close. So obviously it's important for them to see like how quickly is this person meeting my criteria. If not, let's move on to the next lead, right? So I think their role is very different from a long-term, long-haul team, which is in the product unit.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I want to say thank you so much. A big round of applause. And now we're going to set up the panel. So actually one thing I would like you to do, and I learned this from the accessibility meetup that was here maybe 3 weeks ago. And one of the speakers actually asked the audience to just look left and right and behind and ahead and just say hello and have a conversation about what just happened. So I want you, while we set up for 2 minutes, just to look around and pick somebody you haven't met or you don't know really well, and just tell them the one thing you learn, and then just wait for them to answer back. So do this straight away. Thank you. You guys want to come in? Yeah, your turn. Yeah, now, it's your time to shine. Mike, if you want. Okay, so maybe if you want to share the mic, if we only we'll just bring it.
Is that good? Deflect. Well, that's what the
Enough information.
that's a Jitea question.
Okay, so try and finish up if you can and come back. We're going to start the panel in about 30 seconds. Okay, so I hope you had a very interesting conversation there and you learned something nice. Okay, so we have an absolutely amazing panel now. So I'm just going to click on the next slide. So our panelists today have a lot of experience, and they have experience across the different business verticals, if you like, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start asking you just a few guiding questions. And by the way, we had a conversation before and we aligned, and so I know a bit more about our panelists, right? So instead of just trying to put you on the spot, I'll kind of let you go a bit easier today, okay? So this will be more of a conversation, amongst friends, if you like. So I'll start with you, Richard. I can see
Okay.
you're ready. So
You're picking on me first.
I'm curious from our topic today. So the topic we have is redefining product building in the age of AI, right? AI being, the key word. You mentioned something very interesting to me, and you said the point here is that nothing has changed, but everything has changed. So tell me more about that. How does that frame the modern product building scenario?
Okay, so nothing's changed because we still need to focus on human needs. So there seems to be a tendency, or we're finding with a lot of clients, there seems to be a tendency to want to just do AI for AI's sake. There's a bit of a FOMO thing going on there. Just, we better get on this bandwagon as quick as possible. What's the opportunity? Let's just do it. And so they're trying to solve technology problems with technology. They're not really thinking about what the actual problem is that they need to solve and coming up with good use cases and solving for them. So what I mean by nothing's changed is ultimately it's a human need that we have to focus on and solve a problem for the human, whether that's a customer or it's an employee, whoever the end user is. And everything's changed because the approach at which we do that is changing. The opportunity now to be able to do that has, what were we saying? We said that the specialism is broadening. So where one person might have just focused on, like a UX designer might have focused on just figuring out the human need and designing some sort of solution for that. Now they're also building it. Now they can code. Now they have to understand business strategy. So the three classic circles, concentric circles of design or customer and business and tech are coming together. They're blurring and they're merging. And that's why everything's changed. But at the same time, we're still focusing on human needs. So nothing's changed.
Okay.
That might have been a bit long-winded. Sorry, Radu.
No, that's great. Excellent. That's a very interesting thing. But Amelie, let's move on to you. So you mentioned something equally as interesting. So you mentioned that designing in the gray zones between the ideal and the possible. I find that very poetic as well, but can you tell us a bit more about that space? You might have to turn on the mic there. Perfect.
Yes, so in my context, we still start by designing the ideal. So we start with the North Star and what will be the ideal for the user. And then we take it backwards and we work through the limitation with business teams, technical team, based on the real constraints, based on time, budget, go-to-market. So that's why what we are trying to do is in the gray zone between what would be the ideal, the North Star, and what's practically feasible today.
Yeah, I find that framing so nice and so easy to understand. So that's again, thank you for sharing. So Janet, let's move on to you. Engineering and design, right? You were kind of mentioning the combining the two, right? But in terms of a learning loop, what can you tell us about that?
So I said that, and then I've spent 2 days on an AI strategy boot camp in Trinity that's actually changed my thinking on it slightly. So years ago, when we all started like merging UX design and engineering together, and we started thinking about DevOps, and we started having more sort of cross-functional teams across the business. Obviously my teams work with UX design quite closely, and we always have, and we've always done the iterative design, and that's been great. But I think in this new world of AI coming in, we have to start thinking, with policy changing constantly, do we need to start to create a space for more cross-functional across the business? So having policy experts giving their time to our teams or working cross-functionally with our teams to make sure that we're building responsible, that we're, getting, the right members, like from security. Do we need to have security people on our teams to make sure that we're building correctly from an AI maker's point of view? So I'm starting to think about it slightly differently now, that it's not just design and engineering working together, it's the business is starting to get closer and closer. And maybe we need to start thinking about new models of, agile is a big word, but new models of being agile, but in a broader spectrum.
Okay. And I can see some teams emerging already and some overlap between the three answers. So I'm curious, Pooja, from your perspective. So you mentioned looking at signals and trying to turn those signals into bets, but not just campaigns. So what can you tell us about turning those signals into more?
This is going to take me 5 hours. I'll try, right? So typically, this word signals started to come up a lot, especially when we talk to our tech stack owners, right, in the marketing operations, who are looking at 7, 8 different streams of data points. So product usage, they're looking at how our customers and prospects are, what are the things they're looking for on the internet, right? What are the types of events they're going for. So that's a third type of tracking. It's really crazy. But we learn a lot about our prospects. We call them the buyer experience and the buyer journeys and the buyer categories. There's like full-on frameworks behind it. But as you funnel them down, we give weightage against each of them to understand the propensity or the intent to buy, intent to stick around, intent to use. And we use those then signals internally through our CRM to flag to our key account managers or to our sales reps or whoever is in the customer facing role that, okay, a mix of all of these things tells us this is the use case and this is how you need to approach the account or the customer. So it's quite interesting. We're using a lot of AI in that flow of building that information. And we're looking at how we can trigger some dialogue through the product around that context and where should it be human-led. So yeah, that's the signals kind of theme going on in the market at the moment.
Okay, and again, human-led. So we're seeing that nice overlap. So I'm going to stay with you for a bit more on this, because I think the signals kind of leading to the strategy and the strategy informing the signals. I think that's a very interesting loop. So I'm curious from your perspective, what's the one signal that has changed maybe a product or a direction? Can you think of anything? Just so we put that into context.
Okay, I don't know if this is going to be controversial, right? But product-led growth.
We love controversial. You're in the right spot.
Product-led growth is, it's at least in medium segment, it's not working. When I talk to my peers in other areas as well, it's quite in a limited space. And I think this is because of how B2B enterprise and medium segments were designed. It was always going to be human first. We're going to give you expert advice. We are your technology partner, and customers and users are used to that. So even when they're going through the product to explore other areas, they still expect a human intervention or a human support in that process. So yeah, that would be one of the takes.
Okay. Does the word signal mean anything in kind of your Janet?
I've got one
go.
sort of thing. It's kind of related, except it's come up a lot over the last few days, and it's around trust. And I think trust in what's being built, what's being pushed out to customers is really important. How do we, like, our users want to know that they're safe. They want to know that their data is safe. They want to feel that they can trust what's being given to them. And, you know, organizations ensuring that what we are pushing out does align with policy that's being created, like the EU AI Act, that we are certified, that we're transparent about what we're building, how we're building it, what data we're using to build it. It's really important that we share as much as we possibly can to build that trust with our users, and then that way we can get more buy-in for AI. Because if we're just pushing it out and we're not giving them any of that information, how are they going to know what they're getting and what they're giving their information to?
So what do you feel, I'm going to stay with you for just a bit longer. What do you feel has changed from that trust signal coming back?
I think from our perspective at Workday, we've put a lot of effort into risk-based analysis of various aspects of what we're pushing out. You know, there are various levels of risk across different applications of AI. And, you know, unacceptable risk is just something we wouldn't ever go near. And I think that's a shift. But the more the EU AI Act and the policy starts to appear, the more it gives us that foundation for making sure that what we're pushing out is the right thing. Okay.
And you mentioned just before when we were chatting, a guardrail that seemed very, very interesting as a...
I forgot what that was.
Something to do with
you didn't let me write it down.
6 month cycle. You mentioned a 6 month cycle.
Oh, yeah. So Workday, we have a 6 month release cycle, and we've done this deliberately. This is a part of our thing because our customers just don't want us pushing out features constantly to them. They don't want a changing system. They want consistency, and that, again, that helps build their trust. so that they understand what they're getting. They can work with that, and it helps them to have less change, which is going to be very uncomfortable for everybody soon, with given all the change we're going through. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to change tack a bit, and I'm curious from each and one of you if you have any examples of internal AI use that has been really useful. Can you think of a quick example? Amelie, would you like to?
Yes, I have one example. So 2 designers in my team, they are in the room actually, they organized recently an AI workshop. So the problem to solve was how to optimize our login experience for Vodafone customer wanted to log into my Vodafone to manage their account. And they organized a workshop of 2 hours with multiple stakeholders from different teams, data analytics team, designers, business teams, IT, and they split the room in 2 teams, and using various AI tools, both teams had to get a better understanding of the problem and then to move towards the solution space and to design different concepts. And at the end of the workshop, we invited in some senior leaders, and we presented tangible results from what we did with the various tools, prompt to prototype tools. And it was really catalyst to put things into action and to show within the space of 2 hours tangible results. Because one of the concerns that we often hear from other teams is that the design process can take too long. So it's a concrete example where we keep the exact same methodology and we keep the quality, but we fast track the delivery.
Interesting. Okay. Do we have any other examples maybe of internal AI use that has been super helpful?
I can think of a few that we've done with our clients. I can't actually tell you who the clients are, but I can give you. We're seeing there's a lot of successes. A lot of people know that call centers and AI as a use case is quite compelling, and so we've done some experiments with clients around building call center technology built on AI that's able to analyze the customer sentiment coming through. It's able to surface up the data to the customer service representative so that at the front line, the first tier, when they're interacting with, let's say, someone who's making a complaint, they're able to get the information. Maybe they didn't have information or context themselves as a service agent on the complaint itself, but they're able to get that information and they're able to come up with a response back to the complainer,
Customer.
complainer. Thanks. So they're able to actually respond to them at that point, right? So they're able to resolve the issue and improve complaint management a lot more quicker. So that's one use case that we've found. There's another one with another client where they wanted to improve their CRM. So we've been using AI to be able to surface up at different points along the sales process, opportunities and information on their leads, and use that then as a way to signal when they should be reaching back out to them.
Okay, so that's both are interesting because I can see them as augmenting, not purely replacement. I've done studies where I was analyzing how people interact with chatbots, and I realized that most people, when they get to a chatbot, the first thing they say is, "Put me through a human, please. I want to talk to an agent." So I think that's a really interesting point. So let's see, do we have any other example? Yeah, do you want to go ahead?
From the user experience team, right? So got a license with one of our UX research technology that we use. And it's such a great way of democratizing the access to the customer interviews and be able to extract like some keywords to start understanding it. Because traditionally I've always got like long Word documents or transcripts with like pages and pages or like 50 slides to go through, and now I can just like quickly extract all those insights. Kind of sits at the UX team, but some of us have access, and that's really sped up the process around getting customer insights.
Okay. Apologies about the glitch. We're so focused, you could probably turn off the lights and we wouldn't budge. We'll still be here. Okay, so I want to move to another bit, which is the let's call it pre-scale validation. So working on products, you're not going to think of scale immediately, right? But I'm curious if you have any solutions, or maybe before shipping that, have you used any kind of tool to pre-validate that stage somehow?
So I work in a platform team. So scale is the first thing I think about,
Okay.
not the last thing. So I work in our UI platform organization. And so the tooling that we build is used by our internal development teams to build their products that they then sell to our customers to generate revenue. So everything that my team builds can have a massive impact across the business. And I was thinking about this question earlier, and the different ways of testing would be very different for different things that we're releasing. So if we're it really depends on the risk associated with the change that we want to make. If we're making something small, like we're changing, actually we've had instances of changing buttons and it's upset a lot of people. So I won't use that example. But if we're making some pixel changes or we're changing some very small aspects, the testing of that's going to be pretty much non-existent or very minor because it's just a very small change. And while we push it out at scale, it shouldn't have too much of an impact. If we're making a core architectural change, that's a very different thing. That's like, if we're trying to connect different parts of the tech stack, that we have to think more in depth about that. Or if we're making a massive change to the user experience, it's important for us to do a little bit of A/B testing and make sure the experience that we're pushing out will actually have the impact that we want to have. So one of the things we've done recently is on my team, we wanted to roll out a pretty significant change across multiple different product areas. And in order to get to analyze what the impact that was going to have on all of those different product areas, we needed to do some customer analysis on, does this actually change the time to completion? Does this help with the success rate before we could push it out? So I think the answer is mainly that it depends. But the risk analysis and the customer impact associated with each change has to be rigorously identified, and we need to follow that before we can actually push things out across the system.
Okay. Pooja, I want to come back to you. You mentioned forecasting. So when you were implementing the 2FA, you mentioned that you've done some forecasting. So is that a way to maybe test before going to releasing this to a larger audience? What can you tell us about forecasting?
Yeah,
tricks?
I wouldn't typically use forecasting when we're trying to launch a pilot. We just want to get like a cohort that can give us honest feedback, and just keep it like tight. So we would have customer advisory boards, and we would get them to engage with the feature they asked for. It's a simple ask, right? And then we would just even with AI, we've launched Copilot, and we've got let's say 5,000 users is what we want. Let's get it to test and get them to sign up. So that we'd create a buzz and get them to sign up in. The forecasting really shows up when you're going into that active sales mode, right? So that's when we're launching or trying something new from the product perspective, we intentionally keep words like forecasting out of the equation. So, that language is like a really key here, because it could be quickly misunderstood by different teams. So we would look at getting an early adopter set of customers, get their feedback, and then in the background, we create a go-to-market strategy.
Okay. And a question to the panel. beyond revenue, if you think about it, a leading indicator, right? That's again, not necessarily revenue. What's one you would trust and maybe one you wouldn't? Do you have any examples?
I would just say one I would trust is customer sentiment. And in UX, we would spend a lot of time looking at qualitative feedback and looking through verbatim. So that's my
Okay.
my take on
Is
it.
is there one you wouldn't trust? Some kind of leading indicator that you don't agree with?
It depends the context, so I cannot think of one right now.
Okay. Let's see. Can we think of one that we trust?
So I'm going to be slightly different again because a platform team and my customers are internal mostly. So one of the key indicators that we use is advocacy. And I do actually think that because we're building development tooling, that developers liking that tooling, enjoying using it, and the dev experience is incredibly important because we're essentially building a product for them. So them liking it, them telling their friends to use it, the advocacy internally within Workday is actually really powerful for what we do. And it helps to affect our end customers at the same time because they use that to create the user experience. And in one case I found recently that like our tooling is being used, or like I think the monthly active users, the monthly active sessions was like 130 million users were seeing the output from the tooling that we'd created. So really important that they like what we build.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I got one. Right, two.
You're very special.
I know, my mum says that. Validation. So most of the work we do in Studio Plus is more on the product strategy side. We're not necessarily getting to ship the products with our clients, usually get it to a certain stage and then over to them. So validation's key. They might come to us with an idea. Actually, usually they don't come to us with an idea, they come to us with the solution. But often what we have to do is challenge that solution because that solution came from a problem. So we have to backwards reverse engineer what's the problem you're trying to solve. Is that solution a good idea or not? And then sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but then we've got to build something, we've got to go out, we've got to test it, we've got to validate it. But it's really up to the point that we can validate it. What validation is, again, like Amelie, depends on the context. But it's key, like don't go and build something. And literally I've worked in I've had different experiences where, senior managers have built products for millions without validating it. It's a pretty risky thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to add something? Yeah, go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was thinking very hard. Okay, and I went back to that annual report thing, and I was like, okay, what is the biggest validation? Is how many deals we closed? How many customers have we got? They are paying. They're keeping the business live, and that's a big way of. It's a positive signal. It's a data that is true. You can't change that. And the second one I don't trust is actually Net Promoter Score. So NPS. It's first of all, it's such an opposite language from marketing, where the more you have, the better. But in with NPS, it's the lesser, the better. There's detractors and the promoters, but they're in the middle. There's so many customers whose voice is not heard through that metric. It's really confusing. It throws me off. So,
yeah, that NPS conversation is difficult when you have to have it with business stakeholders. I'm curious. Do you suggest something else instead? Were you successful in having that conversation?
you'll see it in our next annual report.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. Okay, so I'd like to move really quickly to team topologies, right? So each and one of you work as part of larger teams, and I want to ask you a slightly more difficult question, and it has to do with.
You said you wouldn't give us difficult questions.
We're kind of working towards
We
difficult.
said we'd point the hard ones towards you.
No,
That was
got
the
there before me.
agreement. So I'm curious if you're leaning more towards generalists in your team or specialists? And have you seen a trend maybe or a shift recently? So generalist versus specialist, what's the consensus maybe?
To me, in my context, in my team, we are all generalists. So generalist product designers. We cover research, UX, UI, and I haven't seen much changes over the last couple of years. We do work differently, but the methodology itself remains the same, and the fundamental haven't changed. So we still value designers who have a strong design eye, who know their craft, but also designers who have an appetite for learning, who are curious, who have also the ability to talk to different teams, talk equally to IT, to business teams, and in general, people who are curious, they will keep learning, and then they will embrace AI and experiment and go with the flow.
Okay. So Janet, from your perspective, I know you live in a different kind of team with a different makeup. I'm curious, what's your take?
My take, I feel like it depends on your role right now. The engineers in my team, if they were to become generalists, it wouldn't work in the space that we're in. It's a very, like, we work with a proprietary programming language in Workday as well. And as I said, we have these internal customers who use that language, and it's incredibly important that they understand the context that they're working in, and they need to be specialists in that area. It's difficult for somebody who's only dipping in and out of it. Even we have a designer who works very closely with my team, and he's just been with us for about 3 years. And if he was to be swapped out for another designer at this point, I don't know what we would do.
Is he here tonight?
He's not.
You know how special he
He's
is?
not, and I'm devastated.
He's watching the live stream from
I
home.
would have told him how much I love him. But no, I love designers. But he's critical to my team's role. And if he was to change, and I've had this conversation with his management, if they take him away from me, I will murder them.
You should have got
People
scale
around
raised.
here know me. It's fine.
So Richard, what's your take on this?
What's the question?
So generalist versus
Oh, yes.
specialist.
So we kind of work in the generalist area because of what we do, but I think I said it earlier. Did I say it at the table over there? I think the specialisms are broadening. Or what I said earlier about the 3 concentric circles beginning to merge. It's, yes, you do need those specializations. Yes, you do need designers who have that eye, who, the keen eye of design and are able to understand human needs in the way that designers can do. And you need developers, and you need, the business. But, what I look for is, first of all, they've got to have business strategy. They need to understand the business. Then they also need to be able to design, because they use design-led methods and apply it to business strategy. But now I want them to code. So you've got designers who can code, and hopefully developers who can design. I think that's, yes, I just said it. I think it's merging into product management.
We were
Controversial.
joking just before we started.
Yes.
And we were saying that I'm a specialist and I specialize in everything. So that could be
Exactly.
along the lines. Okay. Pooja, what's your take?
I'm going to borrow that one. I'm a generalist. What was it again?
I'm a specialist. I specialize in everything.
Yeah, that's a bit what product marketers do all the time. Like, that's our job title under the hood. So yeah, I think as long as you can apply logic of problem solving, because we work with a lot of cross-functional colleagues, that skill set's going to be super important in driving influence and better conversations and outcomes. That is number one. But I think outside of that, like, it doesn't matter which field you're coming from. You could be, in consulting or in engineering. People transition to the different functions and bringing their knowledge and their expertise of managing people. I think that's the key.
Okay. And just to stay on this topic for just a quick flash question. For 2026, what do you think it's a skill that it's not negotiable, you need to have from your perspective? And really quickly, I'll be interested to see what that is. So what do you think is the one skill that is non-negotiable in 2026? Richard.
Why
yeah,
me?
You go.
Because you can hold 2 mics.
Oh, I can. Try 3. I think as I said it earlier, it's get designers start to learn to code and developers start to learn to design. I think it's about starting to recognize that you've got to almost become more entrepreneurial. You've got to be able to recognize user needs, but then you've got to be able to act on it quite fast. And now we've got the tools to be able to do that with AI.
Okay.
Prototype really quickly, validate, move on.
Okay. So
Learn to code
No, but
if you're a designer.
That's it's controversial, but also
Waiting for the questions afterwards.
they'll grill you, I'm sure. Grill him. Do we have any other skill that we would like to add maybe to the mix?
I've got like 3.
Go.
Am I allowed to have 3 if you
Yeah,
can have 2
yeah.
mics?
Yeah.
No, you're all right.
So 3 skills.
1 is enough for me. So we were talking about this actually beforehand. I think continuous learning is super important right now. I don't think we can spend years doing masters or PhDs and all of this. I think we need to be doing micro learning because everything is shifting really, really quickly. So I think it's very important that we keep up to date. Critical thinking is incredibly important because we need to be validating everything that generates. If we lose our critical thinking skills, who's taking care of the output that's coming from these AI tooling? And the other thing is just empathy and ethics and making sure that we're thinking about the humans at the center of everything we do. And I think that is a skill that humans have that AI just isn't going to have. So I think that those things are the most important ones I've come across in the last while.
Yeah, and we were just saying that it seems to be towards a soft skills side of the scale.
Yeah, obviously ML and data science and blah, 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 blah
Yeah.
as well. But,
Those are hard skills.
yeah,
Because they're hard.
but we won't talk about them.
Okay. Amelie, how about you? For your team, what's a non-negotiable skill for 2026?
On my side, I would say as well, if I was to only say one, I would say continuous learning as well, as you said, because that's the one skill which can cover them all. Then if you have a strong appetite to learn, then you will be able to adapt and to learn the next skills, which will be in demand.
Okay,
I'll give it a shot.
go.
All of those, but I think to be bold is really important, like be brave, because we're going through such a shift in, the way we're operating our business models. Everyone's looking at what should be our pricing strategy for next year, what should the AI conversation be. I think it's got to be really important to speak up about the ideas you've got because they can come from anywhere. And right now, nothing can be dismissed easily. Everything's at stake. So just be really bold and brave and speak up about your ideas.
And does that mean taking more risk, maybe?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, don't be scared of taking the risk of sharing your opinions and bringing that positive dialogue, even if it's a different opinion.
Okay. So let's move on from such a very interesting conversation, which I'm sure we can probably stay a bit longer, but just in the spirit of moving things along towards a conclusion, hopefully. We have some rapid fire questions, and this is really I agree or I disagree. And we can let people ask questions if we want to go into topics a bit deeper. But here's the first one. Pricing and packaging of a product is a UX decision. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
Depends on how we defined UX, but disagree.
Okay. Janet, from your perspective.
I
think you could say it depends for everything.
Bye.
It depends. That's my answer. It depends.
But do you think it's a user experience?
No,
Okay.
no. I'm with Pooja on this one.
Okay. Amelie, how about you?
And I disagree as well on
Okay.
that one.
So we have a four disagrees. Okay. How about the next one? Generalist.
Wait. Why did you ask that question? Do you disagree with us? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that pricing and packaging and discussions around product are part of the user experience, but that's only because user experience is not just the team, it's the whole company.
Oh, I see what you did there.
So the UX team or design team doesn't own the user experience. That's a bigger thing.
Oh, he thought about that.
Yeah. A few hours went into that question. Okay.
Told me to plant that question.
So let's see, in terms of most teams should delete at least one dashboard metric. Agree or disagree? And think about your specific case.
Repeat it.
If you measure anything on your dashboards, right? You have a dashboard metric. Every team should shed at least one dashboard metric.
It's project-based metrics, dashboards.
And do you feel like they should add more or take one away maybe? Do you feel like you have too many metrics?
How much can the team digest? There's just too much information. So
Okay.
maybe just the most important, focus on the constraints and just, build your metrics around that or dashboards around that.
So better dashboard building in terms of measuring the right things. Okay.
CSAT and NPS. I'll go with you on that one, Pooja.
So would you drop them
Yes.
in an instant, or you would need a bit of time to think?
Oh, I see. You have you want me
bone
to
to
ask
pick,
you
which-
why you're asking that question again.
No. Janet, what's yours? Do you think you have too many or not enough metrics? Would you
Oof.
drop some?
I can't think of any. Like the ones that we pay the most attention to are engineering ones that we need. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna
So you're happy with
gonna
with the
skip
dashboard?
that.
Okay. Amelie, how about you?
I would keep them all, but I would maybe prioritize some metrics over some other, depending on the projects that we are working on.
Okay. So let's see, we have another two questions here. Let's see if we have time for both. So designers should learn to code, at least for prototyping. And I'm not gonna start with Richard. So should designers learn how to code, at least from a prototyping perspective, for fast iterations?
To me, designers don't necessarily need to know how to code. However, it is extremely useful to know the basics and to have at least an understanding of how coding work. However, from a prototyping perspective, now that we see the development of Figma Make and other prompt to prototype tool, I don't know if it's still going to be relevant specifically to know how to code for prototyping, but it's still extremely important to know the basics.
So you're leaning on the yes.
Yes and no.
Okay. Janet, what would you say from?
So before I answer this, I want to know why Richard thinks designers should learn to code.
Richard?
That's a really cool question. Yeah, it was a really cool question. I'm not saying that they need to learn to the degree of coding or be engineers like yourself. I'm saying that now, because the topic or the theme of this panel discussion is about AI, that it's possible now to use AI, use GitHub Copilot, use Lovable, whatever you want, but you still need to understand the code. If you're going to build a product, and I'm talking about this from a product strategy point of view, you still need to be able to look at the underlying code, the product, and understand every line of code that you're building. So I don't think you should ship that code before. I can see the way you're looking at me like that. It's not shippable code, but you still, in fact, if you want it to be shippable in any shape or form, you're going to need to be able to know that it is. And this is if you're working on your own, and this is if you're doing something more entrepreneurial, and this is if you're working more on the product strategy side, not maybe on the working in bigger team side.
Okay, now
That's an
this
important
makes
caveat.
sense. I think, again, it depends. I think that designers in general, if you're just coming up with a prototype, there's lots of tools that you can use now to just auto-generate the code for you and make a quick prototype, and you don't need to learn how to code. If you're moving into a world where you're merging roles together, or you're an entrepreneur and you do actually need to push something out to production, then they would need to learn how to code. Things like all of the NF4s that we take care of, like security, performance, accessibility, all of those things, you would need to know what you were doing and best practice related to those in order to be able to produce anything that was stable. But if it's just a designer who's then going to pass this over to engineers who are going to take care of that stuff, I don't think so.
So it's a partial yes and no depending. Okay.
Yeah. That's a long answer.
Pooja, what's your take? Would you like your designers to know how
I'm
to?
so far away from that world. I think it's unfair for me to comment, but I do think like if someone told me product marketers want you should code, I'd be like, not happening.
So it's a hard no. Okay.
Yeah, like I think there's a right place for everything, and we shouldn't, like, the skill set of a designer is to design, and if they should have like the support system to get them to deliver on their special expertise.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think we had there's a lot to unpack. I can't wait to watch the recording. So a big round of applause for our panel. Let's see, we can take a couple of questions. So let's see, we covered a lot, so I appreciate if it's hard to think of anything.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I think all of you agreed on the continuous development. So if each of you could mention how do you foster that continuous improvement within yourselves and your team?
So continuous improvement, how do you foster that in a team? Any specific ways?
So in my team, we have a UX book club. So on a monthly basis, we all read or listen to the same book, and then we meet to talk about it. We also encourage, of course, everybody to take time to block some time in their own calendar to learn on different topics. And we also have a session every 2 weeks within the design and content team where we share use cases of how we use AI, and we talk about the different new tools that each of us experimented to share what worked, what didn't work.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like an amazing way to share knowledge.
Some very similar stuff. My team's, the part of the organization I'm in, we work in sprints. People probably know what sprints are, but every 2 weeks we do what we call a Freedom Friday, and we give that over to everybody in the organization to be either able to focus on learning and development for the day, or work on a proof of concept or some innovative side projects that they have going on. And it's a very protected time. They're not working on sprint. They're literally doing this, and managers check in on what they're working on, making sure they're doing something that's beneficial for either their personal development or innovation across the company. And we do a lot of share backs and things like that as well. So
Okay. Who wants to go next?
you should answer that on the mic.
My wife is calling me to tell me to lock my daughter's iPad.
Sounds like something you should pay
Very
attention
distracting.
to.
Hang on. Let me try and answer the question first.
So
Multitasking.
continuous learning. How do
Continuous
you-
learning. Well, we do a lot of learning and development as well in EY. So that's very much, I think it's something like, I can't remember how many hours a year that it's a requirement that you have to do.
Okay.
And then there's quite a extensive library of portals. I think you can do an MBA through it's called a tech MBA in EY. It takes ages, but you can do it. So there's a lot of things like that in terms of continuous learning that's already set up within the system. But then in terms of just from our point of view as a creative team, we just try to meet as regularly as we can. We meet once every 2 weeks, and then we look to bring creative inspiration to those meetings and share that creative inspiration as well. And that it can also spark, or motivate people to want to learn about it. And maybe there's a skill there that they can acquire as well.
Okay. Pooja, do you wanna mention how do you foster that continuous learning just from your side? Because I know your team is quite different. So
Yeah. So I think it's pretty much hands-on on the job. You're just thrown into the middle of the ocean, go figure, right? But I think the traits are the same characteristics, which is be curious, ask more questions, understand. We also have partnerships with like a lot of learning, like universities and courses, and you get access to that. So, and it's pretty much like you have to take the initiative to just, get a seat or like access it through your company, but also like getting the right support system. So like I would have my mentors, my coaches, people I like really look up to, and I would just reach out to them and learn more, which is out of my, again, comfort zone, not typically product marketing, but understanding different functions. Because I think if you want to be relevant and have an influence in a discussion, you need to know all perspectives. So that is a part of continuous learning as well.
okay. You got the whole bag of tricks there. Okay, let's see. Next question.
Thanks, guys, for the insights. So my question is coming from the productivity lens. I think like things are changing at a very rapid pace. I think so in terms of measuring productivity, what is working like with tools, like there are a lot of tools in AI, like in SDLC development, right? So how do you measure that thing? Is it like time to market, sprint velocity? How much is the optimized code, you're writing, your team is writing, or is it like how much rework is being done in order to kind of like, continuously quantify like, what is working and what is not working? So it's kind of like a broad matrix, like sometimes like productivity people will say like we have a lot of tools, but is it actually making you like giving more time, I think, for what Janet was mentioning, for innovation and creative stuff? Because there are a lot of things I think like I don't like in my job. So that's why I use AI to do that job, because I can focus on something more creative, more critical thinking, and I can architect things better, So what's the kind of like, productivity guidelines you guys think that we need more in order to quantify so that it can work for like broader teams and global functions,
That's a big question.
I want to give this one to Richard.
Would you like a mic?
I'll try to answer a little bit, and then you can.
Okay.
My answer at the moment is I don't know yet. I don't actually know, because we've started rolling out like Cursor and various other AI tooling to our software engineers, but we're still in a phase of figuring out which tooling is actually going to benefit them and which ones maybe we aren't. So it's sort of a bit of a experimentation going on. I think experimentation is really important right now because there's so much change happening, and innovation is always a type of change. It's always disruptive. It's always, you have to take small experiments and chance things and try things out. And then once things start to settle, then we'll start to standardize what the metrics should be. But right now, I think we're in a state of flux that I don't think we've defined accurate measurements right now. I do know some of the tooling is helping them with, things that engineers generally hate doing, which is like documentation and things like that. Nobody likes writing documentation, including me. But yeah, like those kind of tasks or configuration files and those kind of things, it makes it much faster for them to do those right now. But some of the agents for writing code is probably going to take a bit longer to figure out what we're doing there.
What she said.
Nice.
No, I completely agree. Like, I don't think that we know yet. You know, I don't. Maybe some people, if anyone in the audience has figured out, a good workflow that they're using AI for that's maximize their productivity, let us know. But like you're right. There are simple tasks like writing documentation, all of that. That's definitely you're starting to see productivity there. It's obvious. I'm not measuring it, but I'm still pretty busy. So yeah, I don't know yet. And I'm not measuring it specifically.
It's a hard thing to measure. I think it's too early, but we will get some dashboards soon.
Or metrics.
That's it. Okay, well, listen, folks, thank you so much. A big round of applause to our panel. And of course, we can keep the conversation going. I think this is one of the core things we do as a community. And I just want to really quickly move on and just finish this up. But a really big thank you for being here. As a thank you from UXDX team, you also get a discount for the conferences, very specifically for the one in Berlin, right? And as part of that, if you get the ticket, you also get a mentorship opportunity included within that, right? So that's the place where you can ask the stringent questions you have, and just really have an opportunity to learn on top of what you will learn from the conference, right? So keep this in mind. There's a promo code there, so if you want, definitely reach out. And I think for today, one thing I'll ask of you is to leave some feedback. So let us know what worked, what didn't, what you think, what did you learn, and how was your interaction. Let's keep the conversation going, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.